financial point of view. This was the analysis of the overtime. I'm trying to remember, we had so many meetings, but we showed this during the budget workshop, and I think where all of you were there. What are the kind of categories that drive overtime? I think towards the end of the afternoon, I also sent you out an email, and we can discuss that in executive session if you would like. That might provide some further information on this. So, any questions on the transfer in particular? If not, we can go back to the motion and formally put it on the table.
I'll move to approve the resolution to transfer $20,000 from contingency to overtime to cover additional hours for probation sweeps incident that animal control, additional food patrol, and the fatal collision. I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Again, any further questions, discussion? Call the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. So with that, I believe we'll move on to, no, something else? Oh, right, because we need a town meeting. Yes, so I need another motion to establish the town meeting. Now, we've got two choices here. Board of Finance will need to review this. Their next meeting, I believe, is April 14th. Just that Monday right around there. And our next scheduled Board of Selectmen meeting would be the following Thursday, the 17th. So that would be the first date. I know I will not be here for the April 17th meeting. And so we could wait until the May meeting if you'd be more comfortable with having the town meeting along with the Board of Selectmen meeting on, I think it's May 1st is the next meeting after that. So before we fill in the date, any particular concerns or with delaying it to the May 1st? Or do you ever try and make sure we have a meeting on the 17th? Chad would have to chair that meeting, so.
Yeah, I guess it's a little hard to tell today. I think our next meeting, we'll have better meetings coming on and the meeting on. As far as the meeting, I guess if you want to move that.
Well, what we could do tonight is leave that second resolution for April 3rd. We'll put that on the agenda, and like I say, we'll have a better sense of if we're moving things along, resolving things, or things building up. Is that fair enough?
That's kind of what I was thinking.
Okay. So we won't move on the second part. We'll hold that and put that under, I would say, transfers for the April 3rd meeting. All right. So I think that takes us to the consent agenda. A motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second. Seconded by Ken. Moved by Jennifer and seconded by Ken. And call the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The next item is bids and proposals. I ask Ray Mather to come forward. This is in regard to something we've been working on for quite a while, Ray especially, to really improve our infrastructure, especially for the police department, so that they're on the same footing as the rest of the town operations. We see many benefits for doing this, the primary one being to improve our emergency communications, but it gets complicated working with the state police. We are a part of the state police department, so we have to pay attention to their protocols and their operational concerns about security. So I think Ray is finally, after a lot of work, and I think he needs to be congratulated for his efforts to get something moving here. He'll describe that and his request to the board.
Well, as I said in the letter, and as we talked before, we now have approval from the state to move forward with a conceptual design, which includes buying some hardware and using some Citrix licenses in order to isolate dispatch from the collect systems and from the internet in two different paths. This whole concept, both reviewing the requirements from the state and federal government and based on prior work with the state, has been done by a company called AccuTel. Right, we were able to find them. They had this relationship with the people in Hartford, and they went through a number of meetings with Hartford, did a redesign to meet the requirements of state police, and they've come through with an approval from the state police. So I'm recommending that we go with this vendor. This is not at the level of a bid, it's a level of competitive analysis. I don't have multiple quotes, but I did take the commodity pieces of this and compare the price from the vendor against the price that we could get from Dell or I could get on the internet. And aside from the labor, it's very compatible. So I'm asking that we waive the multiple vendor requirement of this and proceed to go ahead with this company that has given us a proposal that we've got approved.
Just so I understand, we're just, all this is creating a, the police onto the same network?
This is to allow us to take the police pieces that today are private and not on the internet, to have them segregated in such a way that they're using our internet access, but there's a server in the middle that only serves out web pages.
So this is sort of a firewall.
It's a firewall process, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions about what we're trying to accomplish with the police and why they
Have any
like
other companies gotten approval from the state police to do this type of work?
I'm not aware of any others in a resident trooper environment. There are other places where there are towns and they've done it because the networks are different. But in terms of working through the state police, I'm not aware of it.
Okay, thank you.
This is a little bit of groundbreaking on our part to get it to work. Other towns might follow.
Thank you.
So we,
I'll move the resolution.
I'll second.
motion has been moved and seconded. Any further questions? Anyone want to speak for or against? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you again, Ray, for your leadership on doing this. The next item is, I wanted to give you a few updates on things we've been working on in our first selectmen's office. And, hopefully we can bring some materials up here for you. I did want to just take a second, in the consent agenda was the resignation of Kathy and Paul Palmer, and I think it's worth recognizing the amount of service that both of them have been doing to this town, for this town over quite a long period of time. Here's a list for both Kathy and Paul and their work from the standpoint of both of our trees and our buildings, as well as wetlands. And in the case of Paul, 8 years as a selectman, 4 terms, as well as prior to that working on the Wetlands Commission, deserve the thanks of the whole community, especially this board, because we build on all the great work that's been done by people before us. So I just want to say, a hearty thanks to all that they've done for us.
And I was gonna ask you, but I didn't get a chance to call you this week when I saw this, because obviously they've been such great assets to the town. I guess I was wondering whether we could send them a letter of thanks and commendation from the town to them for all their service, and as you point out. I don't know if you have a motion on that.
I think that's a great idea. I actually would, even something more permanent, such as a plaque of recognition. I think they have been extraordinary citizens and they've done a lot to preserve our history.
So I don't want to spoil this, but I've reached out to say we should, as a town, we should try and do something. And sort of working with some other people to maybe have an event. So now that I've said it, if it doesn't work out, it'll be terrible.
And that's why I should have called you before and not.
But that wouldn't preclude us as the board of selectmen or the first selectman from sending a letter for our appreciation.
That's a good idea. I was kind of hoping, but we'll do that as a minimum, and maybe we'll be able to do some more.
That doesn't mean that's all.
All right, so a couple of topics that I thought you'd be interested. With regard to the dogs, we've been very successful in making progress thanks to the good work of our animal control officers and our attorney. We've got 10 dogs now have been adopted out since we began this whole process. We've now been able to work through the telephone with the owner of the dogs. I think she's starting to be a little bit more cooperative, but clearly in the case of several of the dogs, so that's we've made some progress. We brought in a trainer to the pound who's been working on what I would call socialization. There might be a better word for that, but getting the dogs better trained so that they'll do better once they're adopted out. We have interviews scheduled for 2 kennel cleaners to distribute the workload amongst more people up there. And the next court date is March 28th. And during executive session, I'll be glad to try to give you a little bit more information. With regard to trucks, as you might remember, I think it was the last meeting we agreed, and might have been the meeting before that, truck number 54, the insurance agent's insurance appraiser came in, declared it total. We've gone forward to order that new truck that we learned was available, and the insurance company assessed the residual value of the damaged truck at about $35,000. So we'll receive that money back to offset the approximate, I think it was
We'll get a new truck for
170.
$20,000, essentially. We'll get a new truck for $20,000, essentially.
No, it was 170,000. Sure.
Oh, okay, you're right.
So we'll get it for 140 or 135,000. So, yeah, expensive truck, no doubt about it. Truck number 6, which is the one that had the rollover from last June. We've been working with the insurance company, and we think it's good news. The appraiser went out there earlier this week, the insurance appraiser again, for another review. And there was this whole idea of removing the cab, again, the bed of the truck, which rolled. That's been taken off for quite a while and exposed the rails below, which had twists to it. So those we could observe. The remainder of the rails, because the rails really go from bumper to bumper, if you will, are under the cab. And the only way to get that off, I think we've been able to prove to the appraiser, is not a simple process. It's not like, my rector set me on to do 2 bolts and then the cab comes off. So it's a pretty invasive kind of thing that would do quite a lot of damage. And we're hoping that the appraiser is going to recommend to the insurance company, let's not wait for that to happen. We should make the full value available to the client, in this case us. So not finished yet. Very frustrated how long it's taken, but we are trying to get as much of what we think we're due here. Although the difference is getting smaller in terms of where the 2 sides are. The fire truck should be back in service by the end of the month, maybe even sooner, but clearly by the end of the month is what we're expecting. I had forgotten, to be quite honest, but back about a year ago, Sandy Hook Fire Department was having a problem and needed a tanker, and we had an older one, and there was a conversation between the 2 fire departments, and we agreed to lend them one of our tankers. Since then, we bought new equipment that basically made that tanker no longer necessary for us, but Sandy Hook Fire, a volunteer fire association, has come back and asked if they can purchase it from us. I've given that a temporary okay to say let's go forward and see what would be the numbers involved in that, see how much money is really involved. But I think it's a nice gesture. It's not a piece of equipment that we need. I think per our charter, anytime we're getting rid of or disposing of used equipment, it should go out on an auction. But I think let's see what the numbers are from Sandy Hook and then decide, because of them being a neighbor of ours, that's kind of what we want to do anyway, to help them out. But we'll have more numbers.
Ed, can I go back to truck 54 for a minute? I believe you said that the cost to replace it is $170,000. Was that the right number?
Okay, around.
Okay, but I don't believe that includes all the outfitting of the truck for the put down the salt spreader, all that. So there's significant other costs associated with that truck.
I'm almost 90% positive that that's
the total
all
cost.
in. That's the loaded cost.
Loaded cost.
That's what we've been paying for the last couple of trucks. That's all in.
All
that
in.
equipment.
Okay.
Yeah, that's in the spec. But I'd be glad to double check and get back to you.
Yeah, because I know we had discussions in the budget meetings about trucks and outfitting them for sand and salt.
And it becomes, part of our specification. So we want them coming that way and not find out that when we do the aftermarket add-ons,
Costs us more.
well, it costs them equal 20 fingers. It doesn't work because the truck wasn't right, or the truck, it wasn't right because you didn't install it right. We want that we receive it knowing everything is working. On the next chart, just John and I had an opportunity to go to visit with the Newtown First Selectman and Fiscal Director. I think it was a very interesting meeting. As many of you know, John and I both are committed to the idea of strategic planning. I would say John is even more fired up than I am some days about this, and that's great. And so I think we've got a different perspective there. about how they approach it with a very large reliance on their plan of conservation and development as a document they use each year to test what should be in our capital budget. We typically don't go back to that plan of conservation and development as a guideline or a guidepost to say where are we going. We also saw they had a number of what seemed to us cursory level to be some very interesting policies, a lot of which we haven't formalized to the degree that they have, and that might be worth taking as a starting point in saying that something we should consider having. We also had a chance, and I know this has been an interesting topic for us for a while, about videotaping of meetings, which we knew that Newtown is doing. So we got to see how they're set up. It was all purchased as part of their as you know, they moved their town hall about 6 years ago from Edmonton Town Hall, an older facility, over to Fairfield Hills. Spent quite a lot of money on refurbishing the building. And so the videotaping was part and parcel of that refurbishment. What I think we saw was basically 5 fixed cameras that are all controlled by kind of a little room here, just off to the side with a window, so that one person, according to what I remember, a volunteer, comes in, they're trained, but they can basically run all 5 cameras and kind of edit it in real time. They do not stream. They found that it just wasn't worth the hassle, but basically tried the next day to upload the video to their website using some software that's called Earth Channel. And I think our IT group, again, working a little bit with John, been looking at that as an option that maybe it's not as expensive as we thought, and maybe there's another way to move forward on this. But it's good to see it. Good to see it. I don't know, John, if you want to add anything to that? Next slide. The Southbury Training School, the task force that's focused on the campus. Basically, we've said we've met all we need to. The report to the governor will be compiled. The next step, as you might remember, is our application for a grant for brownfields assessment. We've been told that we should hear about that by the end of the month. That, again, if we got the grant, it would give us a lot more data about any problems up there, and that would help us in any future development. The farmland survey, which apparently the nuts and bolts of getting out and walking all that was hampered by the winter, so it took longer than they expected. My understanding is the legwork's been done. They have a draft of the survey that's being reviewed by both the Department of Developmental Services as well as the Department of Agriculture. So that'll lead to the next steps there. But in thinking about the future of those farmlands, one of the things that I've been wondering about is what do we need to do as a town, or what can we do as a town to foster a lot of foster more agricultural activity at the training school, and for that matter, beyond the training school for the rest of Southbury. Because it's become clear to me there is a lot more farming activity that goes on in this town than we sometimes realize. And so I presented a letter that was in the correspondence to RUPAC to see if they might want to expand their mission to be not only about open space preservation, but also to take on the idea of not only preserving farmland, but fostering and to some degree marketing farming and agricultural activities. I understand they had a good conversation about that, but really concluded they weren't the right group. And so sort of going back to square one to think about an agricultural commission. I was aware that other communities have done this, but I thought, well, we've got enough committees already as a commission, so I was trying not to create one more. But I think we'll go back. The other thing we've started to do, working with our staff, is trying to do what's recommended here as a first step, is to get an inventory of how much farming is going on in Southbury. We'll be working with more staff. We've been asking them, well, what data do we already have that indicates where farming is happening? So if we go to the next chart, next slide, the Council of Governments was able to take what's known as the Public Act 490 information that we have, where people say, my land is being used in agricultural, forestry, or as open space. And this is a first pass at that. However, it doesn't get at a lot of the much smaller farms, the people who have, I forgot what the exact acreage is, but people with